Okay, hello student. Today's video I would like to make that will help because last time we did trigonometric ratios for 30, 45, 60, right? So now I want to focus on what about the angles if the terminal side, is the orange color that you see is on the x-axis, or the terminal side makes an angle of 90, that's on the y-axis, or the terminal side makes an angle of 180, or the terminal side makes an angle of 270, and then finally we get back our angle 360. And the question is, first thing we need to know, I did take the unit circle. So if the unit circle, it has the radius of 1, and from our fundamentals of figuring out what are the coordinates on the x-axis, we do know this is 1 and 0 on the x-axis. The x coordinate is 1, 0 on the other side. On the negative x-axis is minus 1, 0. Then on the y-axis is 0, 1, and this is 0, negative 1. So this is what we already know. So the learning target today is about trigonometric ratios. So trigonometric ratios for quadrantal angles. So what are quadrantal angles? The quadrantal angles is when the terminal side of the angle of the standard. So this is the standard angle, right? And if this is lies, either it aligns on the x-axis, y-axis, or it aligns on the x-axis. Now by definition, so I made a table here quickly so that we can fill it out. So we want to know what is sine of 0, sine 90, sine 180, sine 270, sine 360. So let's go with what the angle is. So first I'll focus is when the angle is 0 and 360. So 0 and 360 is the same thing. So if the angle is 0, that the terminal side it aligns, that's the 0 angle, you don't see nothing, so it's like a 0 angle. So this is x by definition, this is x and y, correct? So that means the angle is 0 here. So that means this part is cosine of 0 and sine of 0. So the first part is x, cosine of the 0. So cosine 0 is 1 and sine 0 is 0. So here sine 0 is 0, cosine 0 is 1. Okay? Then, and the same thing works even for 360 because when you rotate counterclockwise 360 degree, you get back the same place. So they are coterminal angles. So what works for 0 degree also works for 0 and 1 here. Then how do we write the tangent here? The tangent is, by definition, is y over x. So that's like this is x and this is y. So you will see on the, sort of make sure sine 0 is, yeah, did I make a mistake? Cosine 0 is 1, sine 0 is 0. So, yeah, so this is y. Oh, I mean, that's where I made a messed up. So this is y, and this is x, correct? So that's why y over x is 0 divided by 1, that is y over x is 0. So tangent of 0 is 0, and tangent of 360 is also 0. Let's get back to 180 degrees. What about 180 degrees? So when the terminal side reaches on 180, on the other side, this again is x and y, which is cosine. So that's cosine of 180 degrees, comma sine of 180 degrees. So it means cosine of 180 is minus 1, the sine of 180 is 0. So go back here. So cosine of 180 is 0 and cosine of 180 is minus 1. So what do you see is, look at the pattern there. suddenly you realize that the trigonometric ratio sine is value of 0 for the angle 0 and 180, 360. Okay? But for cosine, the angle becomes the cosine of 0 on the x-axis. So the cosine is 1 on the positive x-axis and minus 1 on the negative axis. The last one, tangent, tan of, again for this part, this side also, the tangent is y over x. So the tangent, if I want to know what is tangent of 180, it's y over x because it's 0 divided by minus 1. Otherwise also you can think of trigonometric identities that we've seen earlier video. This is sine theta divided by cosine theta. That is y stands for sine theta, and you can just take a ratio. 0 divided by 1 is 0, 0 divided by minus 1 is 0 again. So this is a 0. So what we learned here is that on the x-axis, so this x-axis, sine and tangent is 0. See this part, sine and tangent. So let me use maybe a color there. Put a red color to show that sine and tan is 0 on the x-axis. So we need to remember this forever and ever, that on anything on the x-axis, or what that means is that the angle, so it's the angle if it is in radians, so 0 and pi and 2 pi, so every time the angle theta, if the angle theta is 1 pi or 2 pi or 3 pi or 4 pi, and not only that, it could be minus, it could be clockwise direction, see? And I could write for anything n pi, where n is the integer, so on the x-axis. So this means the terminal side lies so on the axis, then tan theta. So this is sine theta and cosine theta. Both are 0 for integer multiple of pi. That's like a conclusion. Now check for the other one. What about this time I'm using maybe color, let's see, 90 degrees. So 90 degrees is when the angle is, let me take this off. This is so when the angle is 90 or pi by 2, so this is your xy. Basically, it's cosine of 90 degrees because the angle is 90 here, right? So when the angle is 90, so cosine of 90 and sine of 90. And clearly, cosine 90 is 0. So let's write cosine 90 is 0. And sine 90, so this is 90, is 1. So this is 1. And then, if you want to figure out what is tangent, tan is y over x. So y is 1 and x is 0. So if I take the ratio of 1 over 0, and that's undefined. So you say, hey, that's undefined. Because you get 1 over 0, that's undefined. And what about on the last one is 270, so that means when the terminal side rotates 90 and 90 is 270, so this angle goes all the way here. Oh, let me take this off. I think I made a miss sine and tan here, okay, so sorry about that. Okay. The last one is xy. So the xy, x is 0, but what is it? The definition is cosine of 270 degrees and sine 270 degrees. So that's this point. So cosine 270 is 0, but sine 270 is minus 1. Can you see that? So sine 270 is minus 1, cosine is 0, and if you take the ratio, again this is undefined. So what did we learn from here? So this is like minus 1 over 0, so that's undefined. Now let's conclude. On the y-axis, that means what is 0 on the y-axis? So x is 0, so on the y-axis, so the x is cosine is 0. See this, x is 0, that means here on the y-axis, cosine is 0. Cosine is 0 and tan undefined. So on the x-axis, sine is 0. Can you see the color? So 0, 0, and this one, let me put it as the blue color. So if you see, this is the blue color. So on 90, so if it is 90 and on the y-axis means the 90 angle is the, so here the angle theta is 90 degrees or 270 degrees. The cosine is 0, so x is 0. So the goal here, I'm trying to make this video is only, as I said, the unit circle, we just have to thrash it. We don't have to remember the unit circle. Just think of that, okay, the terminal side on the x-axis, you just say sine is 0 there. And you can just remember this x is cosine, right? So x, y. Then cosine sine. So look at the C and S. So that's what you remember. Cosine is always the x. So on the x-axis, cosine is 0. On the y-axis, sine is 0. So sorry, I just made a mistake here. So on the x-axis, the sine is 0, and on the y-axis, cosine is 0. So hope that helps. You can always remember this directly. So let me conclude here. Cosine is 0 and tan is undefined. And in this example, the sine 90, look at the sine 90 is 1 and sine 270 is minus 1. So this just kind of opposite. On the x-axis, we say cosine is 1, cosine 0 is 1, cosine 180 is minus 1. But on the y-axis, sine 90 is 1 and sine 270 is minus 1. So the best trick to remember is only this: x is cosine, y is sine. So mental maths you can do and say, okay, if you are 90, that's when you think of first one. X is the cosine. The cosine 90 is going to be 0 and sine 90 is